This episode is brought to you by Lindus Group of Companies. Why go anyplace else? And Devil's Isle Racing.
They put their heart and soul into the game with a vision of winning for themselves and their country. They put in countless hours perfecting their skills while making so that they will taste victory. These are our athletes, and now it's time to meet them up close.
And welcome back to today's episode featuring former professional powerboat racer, Mr. Chris Marshall. Mr. Marshall, just before we went to break, we talked about your transition to the professional ranks. And this was in Florida, was it?
Well, they race all over the United States.
Over.
Most of the races tend to be in the South, though, and most of them in Florida, yeah.
So that's a big step up, bigger boats, quicker speeds. Yep. What were some of the highs and lows, during that era of your career?
Well, the highs were, our first year, I was only planning to race for 1 year. Our first year, we came in fourth in the World Championships. And I thought I was on top of the world, fourth place. This was great. I finally got to race in the United States. So it gave us more enthusiasm. We wanted to go even more. So in 2000, we actually won the World Championships down in Key West, which was a fantastic feeling. It was an interesting race, though, because we actually went out on the first there were two races back then for the World Championship. So the first race was on Wednesday. We went out and we were there milling, getting ready to start the race. And Dennis looked at me and said, "Chris, the conditions are changing. We got the wrong propellers on." I looked at Dennis. I said, "Dennis, we're out here. They're going to start this race any moment. We have no control over what's going to happen, when they're going to do it." He said, "No, we got the wrong props." We actually went back into the pits while they're getting ready to start the race, and the crane lifted us up. We changed the prop. We went back out. We got back just in time. They started the race, and we won that race. So that was on the Wednesday.
Wow.
This was in 2000. Rough as anything out there. Came back in, looked at our boat, looked underneath the boat base, not underneath the boat, but inside the boat. It was all broken up from the rough weather that we had out there in the rough weather. And in those days, this is a little technical, but in those days, they used to build the bulkheads rectangular like that. So when the stress hit, when you hit a big wave and everything, all of the stress tended to go into the corners because they were square. So they'd crack like this. Now, and ours was all cracked up underneath. It was like, you probably shouldn't race it. We made the decision that we were going to race it like that for the second race, which was on the Sunday. And we went out on the Sunday. It was much calmer, so it didn't break all apart. And we won the World Championships in 2000. But those are the kind of things we had to go through. Like, if you want to be on the edge to actually win, you'll find that all the bulkheads now, if you look in a race boat or even some of the pleasure boats, you'll find that they're all round now, so that the stress is evenly distributed around a round circle rather than the rectangulars where they just split in the corners. But so that was 2000. We won that. 2001 went back down to Key West. I believe came in second in the first race of that year, and on the second race we were. It was a 14-lap race, and it was lap 14. We were 8 seconds ahead, which is an eternity in a race boat. 8 seconds ahead, going to repeat as world champions, and our lower unit where the prop is attached and everything on the boat broke off halfway through the last lap. I mean, you could taste you were going to win, and we lost one of our motors. So we had to, we were still on planes, so we continued the race, but we came second in 2001. But second meant nothing when you were half a lap away from winning it. So that was the disappointing period, and that's when we sold all of our stuff and everything and retired for a couple of years. And then we came back in 2004, had a good year racing. Let me see, so we came, in 2004, I believe we came second in World Championships on the way back, so that was good. And then in 2005, we won the World Championships. 2006, didn't have a really good year in 2006. And then in 2007, we won a World Championship again. So we ended up with 3 World Championships, and through that period, we also ended up with 3 national championships. So that was great. I don't think they like to, the United States really doesn't like foreign nationals coming in and winning their national championships. But the first person who did that was Derek Simons, actually. And when you see a Bermudian over there and competing like that, and making the Americans mad because you're taking away their national championships, you say, hey, if Derek could do it, I could do it, sort of thing. So he was one of the people who motivated me, actually. But he went out and he organized everything, and he was very competitive out there.
Wow.
Very competitive.
Wow.
And we're still continuing it. We've got a boat over there now, Stephen Bridges and David Sully, and they're competitive. They are right up there with everybody else. I mean, they're leading oftentimes, and those guys are just coming into their own right now. They're going to do fantastic things out there. So
Makes you proud to see that.
proud to see that. And hey, if we can take national championships away from the Americans and make them upset, what the heck?
And perhaps one day even more.
Maybe even more. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
More Bermudians will get that opportunity.
well, and I think there's another team that's going to do it soon, actually. Very soon be out there. But, the racers in Bermuda, I mean, I've raced in the United States, I've raced in Bermuda. We got some of the best racers in the world here in Bermuda. The only problem is it takes a lot to put together a team in the United States. So if you have it's all about opportunity. And sometimes it's not only the opportunity of having access to equipment and things, but it's also the opportunity of when the opportunity arises, you better jump at it because it might be the only time that opportunity arises. So, but we got great racers here, man.
So you definitely got to have thick skin to be involved in this sport.
Oh,
High
yeah.
speeds. What sort of speeds are we talking about? Competing. That you reached as a professional.
Yeah. Oh, well, we were constantly over 100 miles an hour in straightaways in the calmer waters. We were the fastest I think we ever got one of those boats was about 119.5 miles per hour we timed in a kilo run. So, I mean, you're moving out there.
And what about the effects of the water, the waves? I mean, at that speed, those waves feel like a wall, like hitting
Oh,
a wall.
sometimes oh yeah, and that's exactly what you do. You feel like you're hitting concrete. You really do a lot of times when you come down. Um, you know, when we were racing Key West West has an interesting course. You go out and you get really rough water on the outside, and then you come into the bay and you get calmer water. When we were racing our first boat, which was open canopy, open cockpit, I would have to race with one arm basically because at over 100 miles an hour going through that bay, the wind comes up underneath your helmet and just pushes your helmet up like this, like it wants to tear your head off. So one hand had to hold the helmet down, one hand drove. That's when we start getting to canopies. And you get into a canopied race boat at over 100 miles an hour, and you still feel like you're immortal. It's amazing. You don't feel the wind resistance. All you feel is you feel the speed and you're watching the waves, but the canopies are great. But yeah, so it was, I can't explain the feeling. It's the one of the few things in life that I can remember that when you're doing that in the moment, you're not thinking about anything else. All you're thinking about is you're here now, you're thinking about the waves, you're thinking about the competitors, but you're completely immersed in that situation. And I find that even, when we were racing this year, same thing. It's that same feeling. It's just that exhilarating enthusiasm and concentration all at once. So it's a fun.
Now I've seen the photograph. You all flipped over.
Yeah, we had.
What happened there?
Well, we had a few things. I mean, one of the things I have to tell you is whenever you get out there, and I've told a lot of my friends this who are in powerboat racing, you have to be willing to race fast enough that you're going to flip. You have to be on the edge that far. And I used to sit in the race boat as we were getting started for a race, and as we were taking off, and I would tell myself over and over again throughout the race, if you're not scared, you're not going fast enough. Because if you're just sitting back and cruising there, you're not going to beat anybody. So you have to be scared. And that's what always pushed me to being scared. So when I was scared, I didn't reach a level that I'd pull myself back. I just kept telling myself, if you're not scared, you're not going fast enough. So that's basically how we did. But some of the mishaps we did flip a boat in Fort Myers, Florida. around the corner. We rolled it. That was, but you train for that. Anybody who's got canopies you'll train, and have to, at that time we had to do 3 what they call dunker tests, and they would actually flip you over in a swimming pool and to make sure that you knew exactly what to do. And I can tell you, it was a 32-foot dug right, and from flipping that boat, that training was so important because you knew exactly what you did, because you're upside down in the boat, you're harnessed in when you're in a canopy. So you've got to take basically your seatbelts off. And if you just take them off, you're going to fall immediately to the top of the boat and you're going to break your neck. So you got to put one hand up to hold yourself off the top and then undo. So if you didn't know that stuff, you'd be in trouble. But yeah, so that was one. We had another one in Key West, actually, where we jackknifed at 95 miles an hour. The boat went sideways like that, blew a hole through the side of the boat, went right out the back of the boat, and just blew out the whole back of the boat. We didn't flip that time, but a lot of damage to that boat. A lot of damage. We ended up, there's a small island in the middle of Ferry Reach, and this would have been probably 1987, 88. We were coming back into Ferry Reach. It was a regular race, and a cabin cruiser came out in front of us right from behind the island, so we didn't even see the cabin cruiser until it came past us, and it threw a huge wake. I was looking at this wake thinking that, hey, I can make this wake, I can jump this wake at full speed. Well, I couldn't. I thought I could. And the boat came straight up like that. It came down, the prop hit, turned the boat like that, and we ended up right on top of the island, right side up, thank goodness. So Glenn Smith and I were sitting there. Our boat is up on land, and everybody came over and helped us lift it over, but we tore out the whole bottom of that boat. And, so yeah, we've had a few mishaps through the years. And, but that comes with the territory. You prepare as much as you can for them, and safety is number one concern. It really is.
Definitely paramount. I was going to get back to that because the capsules, are they watertight?
They're not watertight.
No?
No,
Okay.
they're
'Cause
not.
no, I thought now they separate from the boat if the boat is in a collision. The capsule comes apart, and it's airtight.
Yeah,
And
they're starting to move towards that, I think. I think they might get there. Right now, it's more for the what I would call the inshore racing, the smaller boats anyway, the small tunnel boats where you have a single driver in there. Those capsules will break away from the boat, so the boat can be destroyed.
that's the tunnel boats.
That's the tunnel boats.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
that because growing up as a kid, do you recall the tunnel boats?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
very-
going down there and
I
watching them.
remember watching them as a youngster.
Yeah.
They were awesome.
Oh, but the ones that were built back then didn't have those safety things on them. And, if they had a bad crash, that thing would just be destroyed, basically the whole boat. And, and you hope that the driver doesn't get injured. Now, as you said, the whole canopy will separate. In an offshore boat now, most of them, I don't believe, will separate. So basically, if you flip one of those boats, basically the water starts coming in right away. So you're upside down and the water's coming up like this over your helmet and everything. First thing you do is we have oxygen tanks in those boats. So when you flip, you actually reach for your oxygen, right? And put them on. Actually, I just thought of another, a couple.
Very high tech. You had Wi-Fi in there too?
But we had radios. We were constantly talking to our crew so they could tell us where the boats were. But yeah, I was just thinking about 2 other things actually, where you're saying, what are some of the dangers and everything in the racing. We had one race in 2005 when we won the world championship in 2005. We were coming down the straightaway, and that was down in Florida as well. We were coming down the straightaway, and our boat hit a wave and went way up like this and went backwards, so that we were basically going backwards. And it came out in Powerboat magazine. They basically said that, we looked like a kite up there, and how we came back right side up, nobody will ever know. But I just remember being upside down. I just remember it's all slow motion when that stuff happens, because we were so high off the water. It was just like slow motion. We were just floating up there. And Dennis just looks at me, and I looked at him, and Dennis just said, "This is really going to hurt, Chris." And I said, "Yeah, I know, Dennis, it is." And the boat came back down, and we had some trim tabs that we had put on the back, and we think it hit the trim tabs, came back down like this, went slightly under, came back up. We lost one of our engine covers, but we won the world championship that year, and that's sort of how you got to push it to do it. So that was an interesting thing. We had another one that was when we were racing the 32 Doug Wright, where we were heading towards the finish line. There were two of us. Gary Blue, who I told you has won like 15 world championships and is still racing down there with against David and Stephen. He was in the lead, and we came past him, and we were 200 yards, 250 yards from the finish line, and our boat came off a wave, came down on its side, and we were literally, there's pictures of it, we were literally on our side. We went 100 yards on our side, and I remember looking over to Dennis, and I saw him reach for his oxygen, and I said, "Dennis, stick with it." And Dennis put his hand back on the throttle, blipped the throttle, and the boat came back up, right side up.
Wow.
We didn't lose one of the engines, but it wouldn't start again. But we were far enough ahead that we were able to idle across in second. Gary still beat us that race. We wanted to beat him real bad, but you get those things. And once again, it's, you gotta, if you're not willing to take those chances, you're just not going to be competitive, especially in the States. The States is amazingly competitive in that class.
Sounds like you guys were on point, as far as communication. You had quick reaction, because in the moment, I'll be frozen, like, what's happening with the boat. And, here you are having this conversation. You're like, no, stick with it. And, he makes the adjustment and,
It was, but it's very much,
you come out on top.
it happens so quick, right? I mean, some of those things happen in less than a second, but it really is like slow motion. Unless it's something that you're completely not expecting, like you hit something that you didn't even see or something, that would be disastrous. But some of those other things, when you're bouncing out of the water, or even when you're flipping, everything slows down. It's a weird sensation. It slows down. You sort of feel yourself looking at the situation and just saying, okay, what am I going to do about this? Can I correct? Can I not correct? But I can't explain any other way that it seems like it's slow motion when those things are happening.
And it's some bit of distance between you, right? Because he's on one side, you're on the other. It's not like you're together in one cockpit, right?
Well, no, we were in one cockpit on those occasions. Okay. I spoke to the earlier boats had the separate cockpits, and then in about 2002, 2003, they all start going to really, it's one canopy, and you're sitting right beside each other, which is far better for communication, far better.
Wow. Going back to those early days, we had talked about the tunnel boats just now. Who were some of the drivers that, caught your eye back in the day?
Yeah, well, one of my, I consider him one of my best friends. Chucky Renault was down there at that time at Ferry Reach, and Chucky is a little crazy, to be honest with you, but he helped me so much. My first year of racing, if I didn't have Chucky to help me out, I wouldn't have done as well as I did. I was blowing up motors. We were down in his place, and he was helping me rebuild motors. He taught me a lot about the mechanical part of boat racing. So yeah, Chucky was down there. Carl Soares was down there not Carl Soares, Ken Deere was down there some of the earlier years when I was watching him. Joey, what's Joey's last name? Can't remember Joey's last name, but Joey was down there. The tunnel boats were amazing in Bermuda, and they were, at that point in time, they were bringing in people from the United States to race with them. Mm-hmm. Robertson was down, or Robertson, I think his last name was down here. There's a lot of the professional racers came down, and they participated in Bermuda waters. So that was probably late 70s, maybe early 80s, but at least in the 70s. It was, people were clamoring. The U.S. professional tunnel boat racers were clamoring to come down here. Seabold, a lot of them were racing boats that Seabold had built actually, and his sons were, when I was in the United States racing, his sons were racing offshore at that point in time, not in my class, but in other classes. So you start hearing the same names come up over the years, but yeah, Bermuda had a great tunnel boat racing at that point.
That's amazing, and certainly that would have helped to raise the standard. You're competing against these guys, some of the best. So that helps you to raise your game.
It does, and the thing nice about the tunnel boat racing in Bermuda was that when you have Ferry Reach and you have a lot of spectators along Ferry Reach, if you have an offshore race, the boats are coming in, but they're going offshore for like 5 miles, and then they're coming in. So the spectators see them just come around once, and then they're gone again. Tunnel boats were all within Ferry Reach. You could watch it, constantly. Every time you look over there, you could watch it. And the junior boats are like that now. So
Yes.
the junior program is racing all within there, right? So I mean, people can come down to Ferry Reach and watch all the junior boat racers racing right around Ferry Reach. They don't lose sight of the boat at any point in time, which is nice. But that might be one of the reasons we had more spectators back in the 70s.
Yeah, all inshore, and you can sit around like a stadium,
It was.
it
It
was
was
like
like
a
a
stadium
stadium.
arena.
Yeah.
Also, I like the trim on them. They used to have those boats trimmed, and they used to just glide on the
I
top,
don't know. And they used to,
and then
they,
they give you that little run.
they give you that little roll, but do you remember when,
Shimmy.
yeah, do you remember when you had the buoy there? Those boats used to go full speed to the buoy, drop, and shoot right back out. It
Wow,
was like, like offshore and everything. You're going around like this, right? You're doing like a wide turn, but it's a much wider. Those guys used to go right for the pin, drop the
wow.
front end, spin it, and take off the same speed in the other direction. It was, I mean, they were crazy. I've never raced
Must
one of
have
them.
felt G-force.
Oh,
Those tight
definitely would
turns
have.
like that,
Definitely would
and
have.
definitely a lot of stress on the hull.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those were good times. You go down there, so they had the tunnel boat racing, then you had the offshore racing and everything. But we're going to get back there again. I'm convinced of it. This committee right now is so enthusiastic, and they're doing such a good job. Nobody realizes the organization that goes in the background, to put on an offshore powerboat race, especially one in Hamilton Harbor like they did last Sunday. They just don't realize it, and I think we're going to get back there because these guys are committed.
And also hats off to the teams, the participants, the competitors,
Yeah,
for the sacrifices they make,
yeah,
and as you said, it's not a cheap sport.
it's not.
But certainly they're sticking it out. You're sticking it out. So that, I think that's a testament of your passion and commitment and dedication to your sport.
And I can't stress enough that it's the feeling of being a club is a great feeling right now. The association is, in my opinion, a club. And they go there, and you have your competitors who you're going to compete with on Sunday, and they're talking to you and they're giving you advice. I mean, the guys we race against, Shane Medeiros and Aaron Butterfield. I mean, Shane comes up to me and says, "Listen, I'm going to tell you. We race an Evinrude engine still. It's an older model, and he races a 115 Mercury. And he says, "Listen, I got to tell you, Chris. Everybody says that the Evinrude will never beat a 115 Mercury. So you got to get yourself a 115 Mercury if you want to be competitive." I said, "Okay, well, just give us a chance. Give us a chance here." But to have those kind of back and forth with competitors, it's a club. It's a great feeling down there when they get together.
Wow. And just going back, you was talking about the risks, some of the risks that are out there in powerboat racing and in all motorsports for that matter. And we just had an incident this year where the young chap, he's had some issues with his steering,
Yeah,
and thankfully it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
yeah.
But I think that also is an example of how quickly things can go.
It can go wrong, and when you're at those speeds, especially, you have to. It's the mechanical issues that are going to hurt the most. If you have a mechanical issue with a boat, whether it's steering, whether it's um, anything basically that's mechanical. Number one, you can't control that. All you can do is prepare for it. So you've got to recognize that that's important. You've got to make sure that your engine is bolted on properly. Test those bolts before every race because they do come loose. But yeah, that's the mechanical side of it is number one, it adds a lot to the risk because something can go wrong mechanically. Number two, it adds a lot to the low points of your racing season because you can be out there doing great and all of a sudden your engine just, breaks down or whatever. And there you are. It doesn't matter how well you were doing. If you don't get across the finish line, it doesn't matter. And we blew up a lot of engines in our life, a lot of engines. I was another one in the United States. I remember it was actually another world championship that we won. We were going around, and after the first couple laps, our buzzers went off. We raced 280 EFIs. The buzzers went off, which says that they were overheating, right? And Dennis, was a mechanic on the boat, basically said, "Chris, we got to stop. We're going to blow up both these motors." And I sat there and I said, Dennis, I'm not going to stop. This was in 2000, actually, our first world championship. I said, I'm not going to stop. Come all the way from Bermuda. All I want to do is race. This is the world championship. It's the last race of the world championship. If we blow them up, we blow them up, but I'm not stopping. And do you know those buzzers went off for that entire race in our ears? We were waiting every second. We were waiting for the engines to blow up. They never blew up, and we won the world championship.
Wow. Living
Never
on the
stopped.
edge, living on the edge.
Right there, man. But those are the kind of things. The mechanical side will get you a lot if you don't prepare properly.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. Well, just to bring the conversation full circle, going forward this year, you and your grandson, how's it going and what's the expectations?
Oh, I'm having a great time. I mean, getting back into the sport, meeting all the new people that are participating, even some of the people who are still racing who were down there when I was down there previously. So it's going really well. He's really excited. He was away at school. He came back for his first race this last Sunday, and he had a blast. So the plan is that we will do a number of races where I'm actually driving the boat and he's the co-pilot. He's got a lot of responsibilities back there, though, as co-pilot, and you got to trust your co-pilot because they do a lot back there. But he will sit behind as co-pilot for a few races, and then he's going to move up. He's got to move up to the front. That's the whole idea. I will stick with him throughout this year, maybe part of next year, but the idea is he's going to take over the race team. One of his friends will have to be co-pilot with him at some point in time, or one of our crew. We've got a great crew right now. We've got Jason Ingham with us, and we've got Kenny Matthias as well. So, they'll stick with us. They're real helpful. So that's where it's heading. I mean, I got it back into it because my grandson wanted to race, and that's where we're going to end up. He's going to end up taking over.
That's great motivation, and I think that's very awesome that you're doing that for your grandson to help bring him through.
Yeah.
I just want to wish you all the best in your future endeavors going forward, and thank you again for taking time out to paying us a visit. I've had a blast. I mean, we can go on forever. I'm just excited. I've really enjoyed our chat, our conversation, and again, all the best going forward. Well, folks, we've come to the end of this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. I just want to say thank you to our guests one more time, to our viewers, our viewers, our sponsors. I look forward to seeing you again real soon right here on Up Close with yours truly, Colin Thompson.